The only person that cares the most about your career and your professional development is you. It is your career. It is your life. It is your profession. Look, if my company gives me professional development, great, but I'm not going to sit here on my haunches and just like sit around and do nothing. This is my career. I need to get better. You got to take your own professional development into your own hands too.
Sales reps are going to struggle with mental health or just general motivation if they don't know where they're going. If they feel like, what am I doing here? What's my next move? Everyone wants growth. They crave growth, whether it's going to bigger accounts selling enterprise, or whether it's going to a place where they can make more money, or whether it's going to leadership. It doesn't matter. People need to know where they're going.
As a salesperson, you know, if you're still doing manual research, if you're still doing certain activities that made you probably wildly successful in your career, there are technologies now that are not meant to automate the personal interaction, but meant to automate workflows behind the scenes and get you access to insights much faster. The technology is evolving so quickly to make our lives easier that, again, I just feel like it is paramount. Like the changes that makes to how we do research is just generational.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of the Fireside Chat. I am very excited to have Jake Dunlop here, who is a thought leader, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because we'll dive into questions, but just to give you a little background on Jake, he's the CEO of Scaled, and Scaled is a sales consulting company. They're known for their leadership in AI, in sales and modern strategies, and really a focus on sales performance, helping companies have the right infrastructure, team, resources, tools in place to really achieve at the highest level consistently and scale their organizations from up 1 million to 10 million to 100 million, that realm. They actually were rated, was it higher than Accenture in management consulting, Jake? Did I get that right?
I mean, look,
G2?
maybe they're not paying attention to G2, but hey, according to G2, we'll take it.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, man. And you have what, 40 people on your team now around?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So he has a big organization, and the reason we're having him on right now is because he just published his brand new book this week called The Innovative Seller. So we're going to dive into that book, why he wrote it, and some of the key takeaways for the group. Before Scaled, Jake was the first VP of sales at Glassdoor, which was sold to Recruit for $1.2 billion. And he was the VP of sales at No Wait, which was acquired by Yelp. So incredible track record. Jake, congrats on the book. Congrats on your accomplishments. And welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. This is my group, my tribe, man.
I love
talking to sales leaders about scaling sales and the future of sales is my passion and kind of never gets old.
Yeah,
not yet anyway.
It's interesting. So I'll get into the book in a minute, but I want, given that everyone listening, most of my audience and my tribe is all account executives, what is, when you think about like a sales leader, okay, do you think sales reps are sales leaders, or do you think frontline sales leaders or CROs or, sales management is leaders?
I mean, that's like an existential question. I mean, I think it depends on who you are in terms of like how you choose to operate. I think we all are leaders in terms of, how we lead our, book of business or our territory, or, how serious we take a profession and helping people. So I think leadership is less of a station and more of a mindset and attitude. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I say that because it's a loaded question, because I always tell people to think of their role as the CEO of their territory, and think of your extended team as resources that work for you and for your customers. So you're leading a team of an SE or maybe a business value person, and even your executives, when to bring them in, or
all day
architects, right? So if you kind of have that mindset of like you own your own business, I think it really does translate to a lot of leadership principles.
Well, 100%. I'll share some, like, not to digress early, but that was my attitude when I worked at Career Builder. I was the youngest national account executive. I was 29 years old out of like 75 national account execs. And so I think I've always been like the smartest, hardworking, lazy person. It's like how I like to, I'm always looking for shortcuts. Like always. And so, I'm 29 years old, right? the CEO of North America or something calls my boss and is like, I see Jake has intel. Tell him to get me. I just heard the CEO speak. Tell him to get me a meeting. I'm like, all right, let's go. Right. And like, there's no way I was going to go do that meeting, but I'm like, hey, our North American VP wants to meet with you. And so I got a meeting with the head of talent, global talent for Intel. I got a meeting with the CEO of Kimpton Hotels, because I just leveraged my executives. Like I knew, I was like, hey, like I'm going to bring these other two people together. And I probably showed up in some like baggy suit, like just like shut up and sat in the corner. But I was really good at that. I was always really good at leading other teams to be. No Wait's another good example. When I was doing like the head of sales there and also kind of helping to spearhead big deals, like, how do you strategically bring in customer success early, when it makes sense, et cetera. So as a seller, you have to be an organizer, or God, then you're just going to be miserable trying to do it all yourself and, not being able to do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I like what you said about like, you're just sitting back in the baggy suit, because I think let other people do the selling for you.
That's kind of leadership, right? Leadership is like you get the right people in the right situations, you facilitate those situations and make sure everybody's set up for success, and you let them solve it. Like I've never thought of it this way, but it actually kind of plays.
Well, that was kind of the Salesforce playbook, right? That's what we did. We had these executive summits. And I remember early on, I would invite people to the executive summit. Benioff would say, hey, we're going to, this luncheon here, get your customers. And we were not allowed to go in the room. We were not allowed to participate. I'm like, how does that even work? It's like, well, they don't want the sellers there. And it was all customers and they were doing roundtables. And so you'd have someone like an executive facilitating a roundtable, and they'd have a customer that they plugged in to kind of share their success, but it was customers selling each other and discussing things, and you were just kind of the facilitator. But I always remember like my job was to get smart people in front of other really, really smart people. So my first year at Salesforce, I got rookie of the year, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I got the head of product for a new product to fly in to meet with the CIO of a big hospital chain, and they were just jamming, and I kind of was like talking, and my manager's kicking me under the table. He's like, stop, like don't talk, like you're screwing it up. So I think there's a lot to that. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room to be a great seller, but you need to know who the smart people are and know how to leverage your resources.
I did on that note, I did have the opposite experience where I had a leader go on a call with me. Again, this is the beauty of being like 29 and in like a position that you borderline may or may not be equipped for. And he look, God bless, but he was not strategic. And so he's going down rabbit holes. And at the end of the meeting, I called him out. I think he was going to, we had driven there together. I thought he was going to punch me. He was so pissed that I had the like audacity. I was like, what are you doing? Like, this was the plan. This was the game plan. It's like, and there's other cases where it's like, no, this is my show. You're the leader. And I think that's a good sales leader. Sales leader knows how to coach and guide. And like, I can't tell you how many hundreds of meetings I let reps like trip over themselves to learn. But no, I swear I almost got punched out by a sales manager once because he did not like that I gave him feedback after.
Did you coach him?
Eventually I started my own company, if you can't get the hint there.
Did you coach him before? Did he know his role and just completely
Yes, of course. Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah, and then he felt the need to just, I don't know, take control or whatever it was, but
yeah, ego.
Ego. It all worked out.
People want to hear themselves sometimes. All right, so let's get into it. So why, first of all, this is your first published book. Congratulations.
Correct.
That's a
Thank
huge,
you.
I know how much work and time. I don't know firsthand, but from friends who've published books, they tell me how much work, time, and effort goes into that. So what made you decide to write the book, The Innovative Seller?
Well, yeah, I mean, it didn't start off that way. I think what it was is like, as a consulting firm and somebody who loves sales, loves building and scaling sales organizations, I kind of just wanted to get this framework. I've always known, I mean, since like a certain time where it kind of was like the veil was lifted, sales is so much more of a process and a repeatable way to, and there's certain like buyer behaviors and things that are actually relatively similar across industries, et cetera. And I really just wanted to try to get all of that out like into like a book. We've done, I don't know, hundreds of playbooks and decks and things like that as an organization. And so I really wanted to standardize some of that. But then what it morphed into is, I started writing before ChatGPT like before November of 2022, right? ChatGPT is only 18 months old, which is insane to think about now, right? Like, and what the book kind of morphed into, and I went back to the publisher, I was like, look, I know you guys wanted to write this book, and it was supposed to be called Everyday Guide to Exceptional Sales, something like that. I said, look, we can still talk about that, but I want to talk about changes in buyer behavior, like how buyers are coming to conversations more educated. So, I'm sorry if I don't want to upset all my Medic fans out there, but, like this concept that like there's one decision maker today, like that there's one human who sits in the mahogany office, that doesn't exist. We have teams of buyers today. Like everybody buys in teams today. There's an end user team where the VP can get told no by like a junior person, et cetera. So I was like, we need to address that there's a shift in customer behavior as well. And that technology is just a part of sales now. It's not just like you as all as sellers, you need to master the tools that you use every day. Like not being able to generate your own reports or not being like is a detriment to your success. And like technology and how to become more effective and more efficient is just a core part of sales today. And so I kind of bled those ideas together about, okay, well, one, how do you actually build a process that meets customers where they're at in the process, right? Whereas like people come today, like it used to be back whenever 15, 20 years ago, people couldn't get educated on your product because nothing existed for them to learn about. So they had to go to the salesperson to learn. Now they have groups like this where you guys talk to each other. You say, hey, I'm having this problem. 3 people recommend it. And you go into that first meeting ready to buy, and then they make you talk to an SDR. Like B2B sales has this kind of conveyor belt sales system that treats everyone one size fits all. Like it's 1996 was the year Medic was invented. 1996. Okay. Like the internet was barely a thing. Okay. Like we just, and not that there's not elements of it that I really like, but we have to start to create more complex ways that we interact with sales organizations. And I'm obviously passionate about where this is going. And if you just look about how much our B2C buying behavior has evolved over the last 5 years, 10 years, and then look at B2B buying behavior, like our selling behavior, we are way behind, way behind.
How do buyers want to buy?
Well, I think we've got to be able to have multiple modes, right? Like I think I call it the book, the framework I use called VEX, which is vetted, educated, cold, and self-service. Like, and I'll actually start backward. Like McKinsey put out a study. It's like, 40% of something of buyers would self-service buy now, like 40 or 50K. Like some certain amount of buyers, like 44% of millennials want like a salesperson less sales experience. Like think of all of you. Do you want to talk to a person first to learn about something? Or do you want to go watch a demo, look at something online, do these things? Like you probably would want to do that. And so it's not, but by the way, some people are cold. So yeah, they need to start at the very beginning. But if someone's vetted, I've talked to this group, I've done these things, maybe that first call, we should have our solutions architect on the call, a customer success person. Like we got to try to meet people where they're at. I think that's really the point. It's not that you don't need to have the steps in a sales process and that you can't have all the same, but it's like, I need to understand that people's entry point into the sales process is not all cold like it used to be, that people are either more educated or they're completely vetted. I use your customer. I already know your pricing. Can we just,
you're giving,
can we go here?
I'm looking at Tamdra, my head of sales right now at the top screen, that you're giving me some ideas, because we have systems that we use where B2C heavy, and I do a ton of marketing like you, and we can see what people have done when they've done it. So if you go on anyone's profile, you can see if they've checked out a white paper, or how many emails they've opened, or how much they've engaged. And some people, they might have 15 tags of things that they followed you for years, right? And so is that kind of like what you're talking about, is being able to see people's experience with your brand prior to talking to them? How do you know like if someone's vetted versus cold?
Great question. Yes, great question. So yes, you can look at that. And then here's like this crazy, you ask them before the meeting. Boom. You send an email that says, I talked to a lot of people today, and sometimes in the first call, you're already using something in our space. You understand this. Other times, this is your first time entering the category. Tell me where you fit on the spectrum so I can make sure to show up more prepared for the first call. That's it. And every buyer looks at that and smiles and is like, thank God. Like this person actually cares, like wants to meet me like where I'm at. So you want to look at that stuff, but literally a simple email. And obviously you can do this on a form if they come inbound, but even if they're cold, or not quite fully vetted, you can do that as well too.
Yeah, I like that because it like puts the onus on kind of the buyer where they could tell you a lot if they want to, or they might say, I'm unfamiliar, just want to
So
learn
let's
a
start
little
at the
bit more.
beginning, because
Yeah.
just imagine how today you send one email and the person's like, yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to a buddy at a networking event. He talked about your guys' product. I'm interested in learning more.
Mhm.
And you have no information. The next person is like, oh no, I talked to that person. Then I went to my, pavilion, whatever, or then I did this, and then I did this. And
Yeah.
I actually have already used your competitor for 2 years. And I used to use you at my old company 3 years ago. And everybody starts at the exact same place.
I've never, forget about the form and the email. That's all great. But even starting a sales call with a new client, asking, hey, how familiar are you with your company, or in my case with Untap Your Sales Potential or whatever, just to get them to talk about their experience. If they do the form, great. If they do the email, great. But even starting there, we used to ask, like, why'd you take the meeting? What are you hoping to get out of it? But how familiar are you with our company? I don't want to repeat anything, just to get an idea of where you stand. I think that would be helpful for a lot of people, just to like give customers a chance to kind of say what they know or where they heard about you. And wouldn't it be great to know they used your company at a previous role, for example, right?
Well, yeah, and maybe even if they're not familiar with their company, how familiar are they with the problem set, right?
Mhm.
Like, even if they use a competitor, like, cool, great, that tells me something about, okay, I don't need to talk about the importance of a sales engagement platform,
Mhm.
right? Like, you've been using this for 3 years,
Yeah.
right? Whereas another person's like, no, we've just been doing manual emails. Okay, well, great, then I need to start here. Like, we just we have to become slightly more sophisticated in selling, and I think you're going to start to see it more and more, where customers are going to consistently choose the superior experience. And they probably, I mean, they already do a little bit. It's just more difficult to track, over the superior product.
Mm.
Like we would choose, think about Amazon as the perfect example. How often, every, weekly or bi-weekly, do you select not the product that you initially wanted, but because it's going to show up in 4 days and another one's going to show up tomorrow, you pick the other product? Like, we already do this every single day in our personal lives, choose what we like consider a slightly inferior product for speed and convenience. And I think all of these all B2C behaviors almost always come over to B2B. It's just, a matter of time.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's start by defining, you're talking about, buyer centricity or customer centricity is one of the qualities of innovative sellers. What are some of the other kind of key things that innovative sellers do?
Yeah, there's 4 C's. That's the third one, which is, I call it customized sales experience. The first is commitment to technology and AI proficiency. And I kind of touched on this at the very beginning, that as a salesperson, if you're still doing manual research, if you're still doing certain activities that made you probably wildly successful in your career, there are technologies now that are not meant to automate the personal interaction, but meant to automate workflows behind the scenes and get you access to insights much faster. And that, as sales reps, like, again, like, if I was a seller, kind of frontline today, like, and my company used Salesforce and, let's say, like, outreach or whatever, I would be certified in Salesforce. I would be certified in outreach. I'd be certified. Like, it takes like, what, 5 to 10 hours? Because right now, like, I'm beholden to the knowledge of a sales ops person who's implemented this thing once. Like, the technology is evolving so quickly to make our lives easier, that, again, I just feel like it is paramount that, especially at ChatGPT, and we can talk about that later, like, the changes that makes to how we do research is just, yeah, generational. The second C is current go to market, and that just talks about this idea that we've got to move away from volume based activities as leading indicators. And look, it worked. Yeah, you were back Salesforce back in the day, Aaron Ross, predictable revenue. You pump out more activities, you pump out more meetings. And here's the difference: when Aaron Ross did that, there was no such thing as sales engagement platforms where sales reps could hit send all. All activities had one singular goal. They were all high quality activities, because a person had to send it one-to-one to somebody, okay? And you could not hit send all to increase your volume. So if you said, hey, we need to do a power hour, every activity still had the same quality level. You fast forward to today, you've got sales reps hitting, we're going to send a bulk email here, and then I'll personalize one part of the email. And I don't want to do this video because that's not customized. or like that takes too much time. We started this to come up with this idea that in order for something to be scalable, it has to be automated. And this is a new concept in sales that's just not true. Like you can build lots of very predictable, high quality systems, like how you build a Tesla. Tesla's tried to like robot everything. And then they realized like, no, humans need to do like this quality assurance, like final mile stuff. And that's kind of where we exist today, is we exist in a world where the salesperson should be using technology to harness to then at the very end, do the personalization or do the customization. That we've got to do that. Send all emails aren't working. It's not at all. So those are the first two, and then the third one.
So what do you see a lot of sales orgs, and I see a lot of people relying more on the tool almost as a shortcut. We're going to hit this many people. And what I'm hearing from you is that quality has gone down with the masses in the outreach and the sales loft and the Salesforce is being able to do some of this one-to-many. Is that what you're seeing too? Like the return on conversion for emails and for some of the outreach has gone way down? Because I've seen that, and I've been moving everyone that I coach anyway to hyper-personalization, doing the research, linking it to what you do, understanding the person, humanizing the process. And I know that works, and it works better than ever, but I feel like it's working better because people get so much shit sent that they can't decipher what's real and what's not, what's good and what's
that's exactly it, man. Literally one of the pillars in the second C is called hyper-personalization. And I think that there's two different ways to think about this. There's customization, which is like very hyper specific to that person. And then there's also relevancy, which is just, I know what this persona and this sub industry trends are, and I can speak to those. Like I know what a HR talent acquisition leader in industrial manufacturing for, tractors, I know what that person is going through. And even those types of messages still work really well because they show like, oh, this person gets it. And right now it's like people's version of customization is like, well, Jake is a direct communicator, so we'll speak directly in less sentences. And then Jake got his MBA at ASU. So, go Devils. Like that is what these crappy automation tools are doing. And look, the proof's in the pudding. Like you look at the results, the results, like at one point last year, it's like 9% of teams were reporting that they're hitting their outbound numbers. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm a data person. Like if there was a way I could tell you that Send All worked, or that some of these like AI tools could magically generate like meetings for you if you just hit Send All, I would tell you to do that. Like I'm not incentivized to tell you to like be more complex. It's funny because, I think a lot of people, if you've been in sales for a little bit, it's like, Jake, isn't that what we always did? Of like, you make it personalized to the persona. It's like, like you can help my business never goes out of style, right? Like that's the way to think about this. So it's about using this technology. And I think that this goes back to the first C, which is most sales leaders outsource their knowledge of sales technology to an operations person who did not have time to go deep on any of this. So most sales leaders don't even know what these tools can do. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, I say, look, whether you're a rep or a CRO or a VP and everything in between, you have to know what these tools are capable of because they are evolving so quickly. I just sat in on one of our clients that just bought Gong's new deals and forecast platform. And I was like, you think of Gong, you think call recording. Like, not anymore. Like it was not too bad. So it's like these tools are evolving that it's just going to be a part of, how we grow and how we scale. And being a seller today, you're going to have to use them, or someone who's 80% as good as you can be just as effective.
Yeah. And it makes sense that if Gong's recording everything, they're going to know what, indicators.
Yeah, all they got to do is take in your emails too. And that's all they started doing. And it's like, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, because they have all the data and they can predict what deals close based on, all of these different factors that are there. So that's exactly right. So looking at trends in sales, we're talking about innovative sellers, but what I've seen happen, and this it's a little disturbing, and honestly, it's grown my community and other people that have similar communities have seen explosive growth, but from AE quota attainment has gone down. The biggest drop from 2022 to 23, it went from 45% down to 39%, according to RepView. And I'm just curious why you think the what's happening with sellers? Is it their quotas are unattainable? Are they selling? They can't keep up with the changing environment? Is it a combination? Like, what do you think is contributing to that massive drop on AE attainment?
Yeah, it's a combo. I don't know if there's one factor. I mean, look, 2021, I think, made a lot of newer sellers delusional. Like 2021 made a lot of software sellers delusional that they're like, it's just this easy, right? Like, so if your heyday was 2021, like that's the time you make it rain, right? Like all the money freed up from COVID, it was raining early 22, let's go. And then 2022, and it's like, uh-oh, uh-oh. And then I think when people set 2023 targets, like, well, it won't keep getting worse. And like it just kind of didn't get better, right? Like, and I think we're seeing some rebounds already in Q1 of this year. So yeah, I think part of it certainly was I don't think people set attainable quotas. I think we set aspirational quotas based on, well, 2022 was like good in the beginning. So I think quotas were certainly a part of it. But I do think part of it is companies are not investing in their people as much as they used to. And you could say it's a chicken and egg problem where people are leaving jobs sooner than ever, right? Like, and then you see people on both sides of the fence, like, it's okay if someone leaves a job every year and a half, and then there's other people who say, no, like you got to learn. I'm somewhere kind of in between. But I do feel like companies are just not investing, I feel like, at the level that they used to in like rep development and like, getting people up to speed, really honing in on our persona. Who do we sell to? What's our value prop? Extended training, leadership training, right? That's a whole other thing, is leadership training.
But why? Why are not companies not investing in developing, man, especially a sales team or sales leaders? That's where
I don't know, man. The sales leadership, I was very, very, very fortunate. Like I had done some sales leadership before I went to a certain company, and the time I got into like my first serious role, like they put me through a whole leadership development program. And like, how do you run a goals one-on-one? Like, how do you do account strategy one-on-one? How do you do a they taught me, I please don't judge me, but I may or may not have like thrown like a pen at someone's cube at some time. Like I was a terrible, like not a good frontline leader. Like I was not good.
I
like,
took someone's proposal in the street.
No,
Jonathan Holly, asked the guy, look him up, took his proposal, ripped it in half, threw it up in the air, and said, "What the F is this?" Stormed my car, got out of there. I was the worst manager in the beginning.
Yeah, I was not, and thank God I had, training and got better over the years. But I do feel like, again, I think it's because I really do feel like part of it is companies are not paying attention that, again, as a company, the only thing I can control is the training that I give people. I can't control if they leave. And at least hopefully they left us in a better position. And I think we want people to ramp faster, whether it's realistic or not. It's like, we want to set more aggressive goals because that's what the forecast and plan says, not what's like actually feasible. Now, do we need to go back to like Xerox days or whatever that was, where I think they used to take like 6 months to train people before they had quota? I don't think that's true. Mm-hmm. And with ChatGPT, I think you can ramp reps much faster too on your personas and who you sell to and products. But I do feel like the training is certainly a part of this as well too, that I don't think we're investing. And then maybe like the other part of this too, and this isn't a knock on anyone, like I do feel like sellers today want something different out of life than sellers wanted maybe 10 or 20 years ago. I think you see sellers today that maybe want to like make good money, decent money, and then go like to Costa Rica for a month and work remote. And then I think you also see less people where it used to be like everyone wanted to climb the corporate ladder. Like you wanted to get to the next job and the next job and the next job. So my desire to want to hit quota versus make like a really good living, quota would help me to get to like, that next leadership job. But if I'm good, I'm happy, I'm making 6 figures and like, I can go and work remote in Spain for whatever, like I'm good. I don't want to climb that ladder. So I think there's like a bunch of factors that kind of go into this. And I think it's, each individual's got their own, and companies got their own reasons why.
Yeah, and I think that kind of parlays into my next question, which is around, so you have this trend of less reps hitting quota for a variety of reasons, and you have another trend, which is even more, for me, more disturbing, which is mental health. And in sellers right now, I would be biased in saying in our community that it's this high, but in the broader sales community, The 70%, according to the State of Mental Health in Sales report that just came out, of sellers report their mental health as fair or poor. And just a few years ago, that was 43% in 2020 during COVID, which to me is a bigger problem, because if your mental health is fair or poor, you're not going to be all in. You're not going to be committed. You're not going to be disciplined. You're not going to have the vision of what you want and why you want it and showing up every day fully if you're struggling with mental health. I'm just curious to get your take on that stat, because that's a bigger issue in my mind.
Well, again, I think a lot of this just goes back to, again, plus selling today is evolved, right? So many sellers today aren't working in offices. I was just actually with a client right before this company. I'm in New York right now, the company called Betterment. And it was interesting. It's like, even going in there, it's like, oh my God, like this is the most full office I've seen in, I don't even remember how long. So I think there's like a connectivity piece of like, hey, we're all going through this struggle together, possibly. And again, I'm not a psychologist, so please, like, this is not meant to be advice. It's more of like, observations, which is, I think, look, sales is a very much, you get punched in the gut a lot. And when you've got people around you and, you're all getting punched around a little bit because, from hearing no and rejection and, big hopes and that, like, you're just sitting there at home with your significant other or nobody, who can't relate, then I think that probably creates a tougher environment, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm fortunate that I didn't kind of learn sales in that environment, but I would think that it's much harder, I would think, to be able to go through the ups and downs of sales alone without, people that have the same context.
I sincerely believe you're right. The word that jumps into my mind right now is isolation. So, you're coming off, we've been isolated in some sense physically in remote work for 4 years, but the isolation that I'm describing is feeling like you're going at it alone. And if you don't feel the support of your leader or your company or your extended team, and it's just like me against the world, like that's a really shitty feeling. And I think that is not just a byproduct. In fact, I would be willing to bet it's not just a byproduct of remote work, because people were working remotely in 2020, where it was 43, and in 2021, and that hasn't changed, right? It's a byproduct of feeling more like I'm just a number. I don't feel supported, or I don't have a purpose in where I am right now in my sales career.
Yeah, and I think too, like, it's not an excuse, but I think, look at sales, people in leadership positions, they don't know what to do either. They're like, I don't like motivating remote people and creating remote connectivity and like how you do this type of shared gut punch, I'll call it, I guess. Like, sales leaders are like, I have no, and nobody's getting them training on how to do that, necessarily either. And I don't have a bunch of like magic bullets for how to solve this necessarily, but that's also certainly a part of this, right? Sales leaders are also like, they're just kind of doing their best. They don't know how to, like if everyone's here in the office and we're all in the room together, it's like, I can read every little expression and I can see that you're engaged and all those things, but it is much harder, virtually to do a lot of that, day in and day out.
I think that's what's giving rise to a lot of these communities where people are going to get support outside of their company to feel seen and heard.
Right.
So what can sales leaders do to keep their reps longer, to develop their reps longer, to be able to make them feel seen and heard or part of something bigger? Like, what would you say to the sales leaders here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things I would say that I think, and by the way, as a salesperson, I think, again, as you can tell from some of the things I've said, like I was always a very direct salesperson about what I wanted, but not every seller is. And so I think there's a few things that we think about. One is a professional development plan, which is, does every single person on my team, do they understand what the next role is potentially for them? And do they understand quantitatively what it would take to get there? And I'm going to call this out, Ian, because this is where I think a lot of reps miss. You need to have that conversation with your boss's boss. Your boss doesn't promote you. Your boss's boss promotes you. Your boss's boss promotes new leaders. Or you need to go have it with the AE manager if you're an SDR. Or you need to go have it with the enterprise manager if you're a inside sales rep. So you need to go, and again, I tell the story in the book too. I was just very, very lucky. I had a leader and I gave him a shout out in the acknowledgements too. Um, and I came into his office very early in my career and he's like, I was like, I want to be in sales leadership. And he goes, that's not a goal. And he was my boss's boss, right? And he goes, that's not a goal. And I go, what do you mean it's not a goal? Of course it's a goal, right? And he's like, no. He goes, because I control it. I control if you get promoted. He goes, so now instead, let me tell you what you can control, your activity every day. If you're going to lead your peers, you need to be leading from the front. Like sales, of course you got to hit your numbers. That's it. Like mentorship. Are you leading trainings for the team? Are you making people around you better? I look for the people that those three things you can control. And so sure enough, 2.5 months later, I got the job and I got promoted to leadership. My boss actually got fired and I got promoted over someone who'd been there for 2.5 years because I anchored toward what they needed. So this idea of a professional development plan, I would go to again, assuming that that's what you want to, kind of move into the next role, which you don't have to want that. There's nothing wrong with making really good money and going to Spain and Costa Rica. It's fine too. But if you do want to do that, I think a professional development plan for the right type of person is really, really important because it helps them to see a quantifiable North Star of where to go. Where I think if you ask the average salesperson, maybe even here, it's like, how many of you know like verbatim quantitatively what it would take to get promoted, not just hit your numbers? And the numbers are usually pretty poor in terms of people that actually know that.
Yeah. Probably not that many.
No. And then I'll talk to leaders and they'll go, well, Jake, we don't want to be too specific. And I'm like, wait, why? Because they're like, someone's a problem. I was like, no, you just define that as a part of the criteria. Like, why would you not want to be specific? It makes it easier for all the leadership team. So I think that that's a big piece of it. And then obviously I think that there's the other ones is just, you have to just manage the individual. And I think that it can be so very hard to do that. We all have our own biases in terms of how we process information and problem solve. But just always making sure like you understand, other people's preferred communication style, like, hey, this person doesn't want to climb the corporate ladder and this person doesn't want this. So, if that's the culture we have where we don't care about any of those things, am I creating a good, inclusive environment for that person as well too, that like they can come in, they can do their work and they can go home, right? As long as they're doing, like the things that we've laid out, black and white. So I think the more black and white things are, Andy called it out. Don't know the metrics, and I'm sure a lot of other people are shaking their head too. But yeah, I think it's a lot of this is about, I call it expectation mismanagement. So the more that leaders can do to be very explicit about whether it's how you get promoted, what does it mean to be a great team member on my team, explicitly, not things like, we are experts at our product. What does that mean? Like we value, we give value in our sales pitch. Define value, right? Like the more that you as a leader can eliminate ambiguity and get very specific, everyone's happier because then they know like, oh, this is the bar. These are the bars that I'm shooting for.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people leave really good companies because we help them find other other companies or at least explore what they want because they feel stuck. And you just said two things which I really want to reiterate. Number one is sales reps are going to struggle with mental health or just general motivation if they don't know where they're going. If they feel like, what am I doing here? What's my next move? Everyone wants growth. They crave growth, whether it's going to bigger accounts selling enterprise or whether it's going to a place where they can make more money or whether it's going to leadership. It doesn't matter. People need to know where they're going. And the onus on that falls on leaders, of course, but it also falls on sales reps, right? To really
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was going to say is don't suffer in silence. Like I cannot tell you, like even like, and I appreciate you, Andy, posting that in the chat. I cannot tell you. Again, I'm so wired the opposite way to be like over the top. That how many reps suffer in silence. And then, I can remember times in my career where again, someone's like, hey, Jake, look, I got to tell you this, like, I need this thing or whatever it is. I'm like, yeah, of course, no problem. And they're like, really? You're like, yeah, of course. Like, you didn't ever articulate, like, you have to be your biggest advocate. Like, and the speech I get around this to reps, Ian, is like, the only person that cares the most about your career and your professional development is you. It is your career. It is your life. It is your profession. And look, if my company gives me professional development, great, but I'm not going to sit here on my haunches and just like sit around and do nothing. This is my career. I need to get better. And so, I would just encourage you, at least go have a conversation with your boss before you're like, this company doesn't care about me, because you could just also not be, you got to take your own professional development into your own hands too. Nobody else is going to want it for you more than
CEO
you.
of your own life, right? Your own business. Where do you want to go? Defining it. I just think there's so much there. Is just knowing where we're going and kind of having a vision for our life and our career. I think that for every seller listening, I think that's critical. And the second thing you said is showing them you care by actually asking what they want. Do you want to take off a month for Spain? Do you want to go? Like my head of sales is going to Bangladesh, and we talked about it, and we're 3 weeks, and we figure I'm thrilled for that. Are you kidding me? To see his his family that he hasn't seen forever. So it's like, have the conversation. We're not monsters here, and like, if they are, it's definitely the wrong company. If your boss doesn't want you to be able to do what you want to do or support you in that, especially if you're hitting your numbers and you're a performer, you're going to want your team to be happy. So I think that's
I think people either have scar tissue from previous roles, or there's a lot of limiting beliefs and other things that lead to it. But yeah, like being your own advocate, I think is something that's important, because your leaders aren't mind readers either. Like they don't know every nuance of a life. You're going through something personally, and I mean, you can kind of decide what you want to share and not. But I would say I think sometimes sales reps can also be a little more transparent with their leader as well, to just kind of and hopefully you work for a somewhat empathetic leader, but just communicating up, right? I think it's also just a part of that.
Makes sense. So you've worked with hundreds of organizations, some great, some not so great. Is there anything you have noticed or observed that top performers have in common across all the orgs that you've worked with, whether there was a great org with a great product market fit, or maybe a brand new startup with no name that was just hitting the market? Any kind of common qualities or characteristics of the top sellers that you've seen that are ubiquitous to any company?
That's a really good question. And again, I think it's evolving too, right? Like I think what it took to be really good at sales 10, 15, 20 years ago is also evolving. There are some things that are still, I think, pretty universal. Common traits, I would say, is like invested in solving problems. Like there's somebody who likes to solve problems. Like they're whether you call it curiosity or problem solver, there's somebody who's like, hey, look, I'm not gonna stop until I get this thing right and this problem gets solved. And I think I see that a lot in leaders as well too. It's like, are they the type of person who always turns and sees a wall, or do they see a wall, take a step back, and realize there's like a ladder over there? Or they see a wall, they look, this time I've got to go climb a rope, and then I think that it's kind of that mindset where I think a lot of poor performers, best performers, everything is their fault. Poor performers, everything's everyone else's fault. My situation, my boss didn't listen to me, this and that. Like, if it happened the first time, I get it. The second time, okay. The third time, it's probably you. Like, you're making really bad choices here, right? Like, there comes a point where like you've got to take the ownership for it. And don't get me wrong, there are really bad bosses out there. But I do feel like you got to do the best with what you can do, and the situation is what it is. So you can choose to worry about it, or you can try to figure it out, or you can choose to leave if you so choose to.
I heard resourcefulness. I heard taking ownership over their results. Curiosity.
I think yeah, those are probably the ones. I mean, yeah, like clever is probably the right word. Like it's I think there's maybe a difference too, like resourceful / clever. Like the best reps find challenge, find shortcuts, etc. They care about the organization. They want it to be successful, and they want to try new things and to break status quos and to do new behaviors.
Yeah, not just trying to have someone. It's almost innovative seller thinking
there you go.
ways to work. So let's talk about two last things, and we'll open up the group. The first is I watched the video where you said intent beats medic, and you've already made a reference to medic being old. What is intent? What is that What does that mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I actually literally wrote that part of the book like 2 months ago, like 2.5 months ago. I basically finished the book and I was like, something is missing here. Because what I started to think about, Ian, is I was like, okay, so we're going to go and people are going to want us to do this like customer journey thing for them. And I was like, and then we're going to implement Medic and I'm like, that's just not how this like works anymore. So I finally kind of like, I was like, I need something in here and again, I did not want to come up with like another acronym, like, there's spiced and bant and like there's plenty. We got acronyms for days. But what I thought was different about, well, one with intent is you could talk to your customer about it. Like, would you want to say like, hey, are you the economic buyer? What's the compelling event? Like maybe you'd say compelling event. That's actually the part of Medic I think is actually still a pretty good part. But I was just like, as we think about adapting to what customers want and meeting them, I tried to think of something. So I'll just kind of like walk through it just pretty quickly. And it's just in with the letter N, not I, as a part of it, and just kind of give you all some insights into why I think it's a superior or a good alternative way for you to think about selling and getting into it. And yeah, like I said, I think that there's a lot of really great pieces with Medic. So I just want to be very clear. Like I actually like Medic and like lots of parts of it.
I came up with predict because I also thought there were some gaps.
Yeah,
so I'm right there with
then
you.
You get it. You get it. So, okay. So the first N is for next steps. In today's environment, people are more distracted than ever. That if you want to think about where a deal is and progressing, you have to be driving momentum and you have to have next steps. Like momentum. And again, I just started to think about where I started this from is like, what are all the things that kill deals? Like, and really thinking about it with today's buyer. And next steps is certainly one of them. People are choosing the status quo more than ever. And so if you're not moving forward, you're dying on the vine there. And then the first T is teams. And this goes back to the comment I was making before. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, champion, economic buyer. I'm like, that's just not how it works. There's not like this one person who's like, I'm going to walk you. And then they bring you to one person and that one person says this. And then that one person says, I sit in office and sign the checks. Like, and what I realized, there's two teams in every deal. There's an end user team, the people that are going to get the utility out of the day-to-day, and they have to be bought in. And then there's the impact and ROI team, and sometimes there's overlap, and they have to be bought in. And they also, going back to my point from before, might be at different levels of education, and I need to start back here or start here. That if if I talk to the end user team, they get excited, we have the bigger demo, and then they loop in, somebody or a couple of people on this team. Well, I might need to go steps back. So teams is just the idea, like, look, there are two teams that are moving through every deal. And in more transactional environments, there's a lot of bleed between those. But you got to think at the end of the day, did I solve the problem of showing them how this is going to impact their day-to-day positively? Did I solve the problem of showing this team how it's going to impact their bottom line or their ROI? Right? So teams instead of individuals. E is education. That's the VEX thing. And, like, am I meeting people like, hey, I know we're at this stage in the deal. Where are these people at in their education level? And there's some criteria that I use in the book that you can kind of customize to your thing. So you got next steps, teams, education. And this was the one where, sometimes things click. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is so good. Which was, look, needs and pains, right? We've been talking about needs and pains for forever. And I'm like, well, that's kind of accurate. Like, they do need to have a pain or a need or they won't move. But then I was thinking about all the variability between reps, that I could have 5 sales reps listen to the same call. And this rep would be like, yeah, oh yeah, there's definitely an issue there. Da, da, da. And then like another rep's like, well, maybe not. And then, so needs and pains are subjective to the rep. And so the second N stands for numerical priority, which is where from a numerical.
Before the second N, where's the E? What was the E before the second?
Education.
Oh,
education, which is
okay,
so what's the educated VEX? Vetted, educated, cold, education. So
Yeah.
numerical priority. Let's eliminate the ambiguity. Hey, end user team, for your group and solving this day-to-day challenge, where is this from a numerical priority standpoint for your group over the next 2 quarters? Jake, it's a top 3. Great. Okay, impact team, where is this numerical priority? It's 18. Okay, we got a problem. But instead, when you forecast based on a need, you're forecasting based on the need of one team. Not that this impact and ROI team is already implementing an ERP system or doing something. So numerical priority, it just eliminates ambiguity. And then time to impact is the last T. And that's similar to like a compelling event. Like we just have to move past the idea the customer doesn't care about a signed contract. The customer cares about the impact, when the impact's going to happen. So, if you've got next steps, you've identified the different teams, you know where they're at in their journey, their education journey, you know what numerical priority you are, as a part of each team, and when they need to see impact, like you kind of have a deal. Because look, if something's a top 2 or 3 numerical priority, I don't need to worry about budget. The budget's there. They've already said that this is a business priority. Now, what is the budget? You can ask that question later, sure. But intent was just like again, I really just tried to align it to what is something that you could show a buyer? What is something that feels more customer centric and fits more with how people actually buy today versus, a methodology that worked for freaking almost 30, what I consider almost like 30 years.
What I like it. See, my predict is all about, is the deal qualified? These are the things why people buy. What I like about yours intent is it's all about the customer. And if you think about next steps, their next steps, what do they have?
Correct.
Their team, their education
Correct.
level. A lot of times they have to educate other people. They have to sell when you're not in the room, right? Their prioritization and their
Correct.
business outcome and when it's being delivered. It's great. It's like,
exactly.
It doesn't conflict anything else. It just puts it kind of in the customer, in the customer seat. They're driving, because you don't want to pressure people. They're not going to do things on your timeline. They're going to do, and they're not going to do it because you want them to do it. They're going to do it because they want to do it, and they get value when they need it.
Yeah, well, the one, that's awesome. I love that you called that out, because that's exactly what's the kind of the point, which is, again, one of the big, crux of the books is this customer centric world. And it's like, we just have to have processes that fit how they want to interact. And I think if more sales leaders had conversations around, this part of it, it would help salespeople to anchor around those things too, as opposed to like, did I identify this person or this? It's like, okay, who are the players for this group? Who are the players? And there's at least 1 or 2 in everyone. I think Gartner said there's like 8 people now in like 2 companies of 200 or something that like are involved in a deal. So it's like, this is just kind of the world we live in. And it's more complex.
What I love is just the numerical priority. That's probably my favorite, just because it's so
good.
direct. And that's why people don't buy. If I don't buy something, it's not because it's not important. It's because it's not my immediate priority in the next 90 days. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested. I'm just putting it on my own roadmap for a Q3 or something like that. We just went through.
Yeah, and you press in on that. I mean, like, look, don't get me wrong. I love understanding needs and pains is at the point of sales. I just, like to your point, I just felt like numerical priority. Like I said, that was the one where it just clicked. I'm like, that's what it is. Yeah, it's not needs or pain.
About it.
It's just so direct, and it's not rude, and it's not that. It's like, hey, where is this numerical priority for you in this? And guess what? It's for the team. Because again, this is where this whole champion idea dies on the vine. The champion will go and tell you, oh my God, we need this like yesterday. They don't know what their boss's priorities are. They don't know what the director over here. And so we're forecasting based on a person who's a part of a team who can say yes or no. But there's so many other players involved that like, it's like, it's helpful, but it's, directionally, but one person's opinion is not how people buy today.
No, not at all. And it has to align with the executives and what's important to them, or it'll get shot down when they take it up too. So having those different levels involved. I've gone way over. I didn't mean to, but I'm just looking at the time. I always want to leave a few minutes for people to ask questions. So if you guys want to ask Jake about anything, again, AI wizard, he's got some killer.
We didn't even get some of that.
Yeah, we didn't even get to the AI. So tell us. I'll start with the first question. What is a custom GPT? What did you build for everyone? Because I do want them to take advantage of that if they're using AI. Just really quick, 1 minute.
I'll send some links where you guys can go check some of them out for free. What really custom GPTs is the future of where AI is going, which is what's called AI agents. And I won't get to calculus here. I'm not a calculus buff or anything, but it's like ChatGPT, you chat. You've got to know how to do prompts. The alternative is you take all of that prompting of what you want this thing to do. So we have one called Discovery Call Prep. It's built inside your paid ChatGPT. And instead of having to know the prompts, we put all that in the custom instructions, like the instructions behind it. And you all can go try and mess around and build some of this stuff yourself. It's kind of fun. And then the prompt suggestion says, I'm ready to get started. And then all you have to do is it says, great, give me a link to the company you're trying to meet with. And because it's been told to ask you those things. So the future of a lot of these is not you having to know how to prompt and how to do all these things, but it's these agents that will then, for specific use cases, we've got one called Perfect Value Prop Builder. If you're building out personas for a new product or something. So there's all these very specific use cases that you can build these custom GPTs for, and then instruct it so you don't have to like type in the same prompts over and over again. That's probably a super, super simple way. And I will send you a couple links that you can share with this crew for free.
Yeah, that'd be great if you could do that. So let's go ahead
Yeah,
and
happy to.
take a couple questions from the group. We have about 20 people on live. Who wants to ask Jake anything based on what you've heard, or AI specific use cases, or anything else? Andy,
Hey, Jake, I just had a quick question. My name's Andy Baylor. I work at CDW, selling professional services on top of ServiceNow, the ServiceNow platform. One thing that's come up recently is like the idea that customers pushing back on like a nice to have versus a need to have. If we're starting with like a fresh licensing cycle, they have a competitive tool. Like, how do you think about like the idea of nice to have versus need to have? And it's something that's come up in Ian's program with, trying to get better executive alignment, solving a business problem, drilling down into the pain. But, how would you kind of go about it from like a non-medic perspective, from the Jake Dunlap perspective?
Well, that goes back to numerical priority, right? Which is like, well, there's something that you have to think about in your sales process. And again, we don't have time to like dissect it, but there's usually a section early that needs to happen called create the need. And create the need is where I think Challenger Sale probably did one of the best in terms of frameworks of describing how to do this, which is, we talk about this of before you jump into kind of what your product is and how you can help after you do your discovery, there's this kind of section in between. And you say, great, hey, I appreciate you kind of walking me through a little bit about how you're handling these things. Let me just tell you what we're seeing in the market. And whenever I built this for my teams and now for companies, we use all third-party data. We say, hey, look, here's some of the big trends that are happening in your world right now. We're looking at CDW, we're looking to consolidate whatever. We're trying to save on the basics. We're trying, and I don't know all your products and the services, so forgive me. We're trying to do these things, these three things, right? How are you all seeing that? Yep, Jake, that's our business. We talked about it before. Yeah, exactly. But the big trend that everyone's thinking about for the rest of 2024 and 2025 is this. And this is where this is where I pour out my Harvard Business Review, Forrester. It's always third-party stats because it's like, look, this isn't me or CDW saying this. This is what Forrester said, that in HR, or in goods over the next blah blah blah, costs are going to go like this, and it's got to be something that creates discomfort. Because before I even describe what I can do, I've got to get you to raise that numerical priority. So if you're hearing that over and over and you're competing in somewhat of a commodity type sale, or it feels commodity, you've got to do that. We call it worldview alignment, where I got to get you to see the world the same way, to where I say, look, there's this big trend. And in order to compete in that trend, you need to do these three things. First, you got to have somebody who can do, you have to do A. Second, you have to do B. Third, you have to do C. That's what we do at CDW. And you're describing yourself in terms of macro problems that are going to happen based on what third-party people said to create discomfort. Because if you're just competing in some of the, and I'd also look at the order of operations of your discovery questions. A lot of times people get too tactical too quick. Like the questions aren't about business priorities early. We instead jump ahead. Oh, hey, how are you handling this thing? And that's like question number 3 or question number 2. And as soon as you do that, boop, now we're having a tactical conversation about replacing this one thing. So and again, I don't know your situation enough, but I would look at discovery first. Am I getting too tactical too quick? And so now I'm having a competition conversation versus understanding priorities and aligning to that. I was always, look, if you're using my competition, amazing. I'm the company that's going to help you to increase revenue this year by 5%. Right? Keep using them, do whatever you want. I'm going to be focused on this big business goal. And then can I get them to unanchor from their worldview, which is I came into this call thinking that this was what was going to happen. And now you educated me that there's a new trend that I need to stay on top of. So
yeah, that's a great answer. No, I appreciate that. Cool. I think it's totally spot on. It resonates with me in terms of getting more strategic, in terms of thinking about business priorities, not tactical questions, and then having a perspective to earn the right to go solve the problem with the customer.
Yeah, because
So,
if they don't believe in that problem, they're not going to buy either. So I'd rather
yep.
like if they don't believe that that challenge that you all solve for uniquely, because it also needs to competitively differentiate you. That's kind of the special sauce. Is then it's really tough.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
create the need, and Challenger says this. We've been talking about this in fundamentals is teach them something new about their business needs or challenges, and then give them a compelling reason to take action, get them to reframe what they're thinking about because they're not thinking about it, or else it would already be a priority and they probably would be already on a path with one of your competitors or doing it themselves. So that's a great answer, Jake. Do you have time for one more? We got to drop. We're right.
I got time. We can do one more. I got to
One
jump
more
in
question. Anyone
5
have
minutes.
last question for Mr. Dunlap? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. I don't see anyone.
Can I jump in if you
Yeah,
want
I'll
to?
go for it, Trevor. Yeah,
All right.
of course. I was about to start the book, but
Jake,
go ahead.
it's great to meet you. I've been following you for years, many years now. And I
Awesome,
remember
man.
one of the clips I saw a long time ago was you and Gary Vee's office. You guys were, I guess, doing some brainstorming, and it was a really cool clip. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but I think you had a full session with your team and Gary Vee that day.
Yep.
For those who don't know, Gary Vaynerchuk is like a marketing agency leader and serial entrepreneur. I'm just curious what you guys talked about and what business strategy came up in that meeting and sort of what ended up resulting out of that.
Well, one, I love that. Yeah, that was from a while ago. That's exactly what it was. And what happened is I'd started listening to Gary, just his podcast, and everything he was saying about Instagram, I was like, oh my God, this is happening on LinkedIn. I was like, every trend he's talking about attention and day trading and all that stuff, I was like, oh, like as a business owner, I always pushed everything to scaled. Hey, scaled is doing this. Scaled is doing this. And I was like your typical sales leader. If you can't track it, it doesn't matter. If you can't track the click or the mindset of like give, right? Jab, 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 right hook was foreign to me until it clicked. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you just give value. You just give a bunch of value. And so I started doing that on LinkedIn. I started and I was like, and this is this is 2018. I was posting almost every day on LinkedIn in 2018. So I saw this path very early of like that this is, and I knew it was working. About 4 months into posting almost every day, we got an inbound. Very first call, the woman says, Jake, I'm not sure what you do, but I think we need your help. And she spent well into 6 figures with us over the course of the next like 12 to 16. And I was like, oh man. And so met with him to be like, what's the path? What do you go? Because he's like the guru. And his answer, I'll tell you what he said. Like his simple answer is more. He's like, start putting out more content. It's like more. And now, and now what it does too is like if I want to go do other things, etc. I've got a platform to go. I wrote a book, right? Like I can go do that, and even though it hopefully drives a lot of business for my company too, it's also going to help a lot of people. But it's about giving value, and I think I had that epiphany from listening to him first of like, you don't need to ask all the time as salespeople. You have been conditioned by your boss to like, what do you mean? Of course I've got to ask, and it really repositioned me to be like give, and then ask, right? So yeah, that was a talk. More. That was just like that's the part that stood out was whenever he's like you are on the path. He's like more.
Yeah. I love that, Jake. I think that's why I found out about you on LinkedIn and saw all your
Cool, man.
over the years. So thanks for
Me
all
too.
that.
Yeah, that's and we're both in Brand Builders Group with Rory Vaden. So
that's right.
That's how we
they were very helpful with the book. Very helpful.
Who's incredible. All right. So where can people get the book? Tell us, how they can stay connected with you.
Go buy the book. Hopefully, if you haven't bought it yet, please do. You also get access if you buy this week to the Innovative Seller community, which is pretty awesome. Thank you, Christy. I appreciate you. Make sure to fill out if you went to this link here, just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn and I will get you access to the Innovative Seller community too, which is a free, well, it's not free. It's going to be charged starting next week. And we've got some other content in there. But go to LinkedIn, /Jake Dunlap. You can find me, go to scale.com as well too. And yeah, I'm pretty accessible.
Awesome, man. Well, Jake, thanks for getting on, and I got a lot of value today. I know our community did. It's great to be connected, and look forward to both of us helping sellers, be more successful in the capacities that we do, and looking forward to staying connected with you as well. So great meeting you, and thanks for coming on.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good to meet
All right,
y'all.
everyone. Take care.